So the first thing that we're actually going to look at in using an activity is updating a view. For now, we're going to treat a view as a black box. We're going to go into how to create views and how they work in the next module. But for now, we're going to focus on the activity, and rather from the activity's viewpoint, how do we update the data in a view? But before we can do anything, we're going to need to create a new project. If you recall from our previous module, we had talked about creating a protein tracking application that would track your daily protein intake. We're going to go ahead and create that project now, and we're going to use it throughout the rest of this course. So I'm going to go to File, New, and I'm going to select Other. And then I'm going to choose Android Project. Then I'm going to give the project the name of Protein Tracker. And then I'm going to target the Android 1.6 API. This way it'll work on a large majority of the phones out there. And then I'm going to give the application name Protein Tracker. And the package name, we'll call it com.proteintracker. Now we need to create a default activity here. Let's just call this default activity main activity. And then I'm going to hit finish. And you can see we've created our project. Now that we've created our project, we're going to be given a default layout that we can utilize to demonstrate how can we update a view. So if I look in layouts here, you'll see that I have a main.xml, and this just has the hello world main activity text here. It has a label here, or actually a text view that we can use here, but we have to give it an ID in order to reference it. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one an ID by doing edit ID, and I'm going to call this main activity text view. Okay, so now our label here, our text view, has an ID, and we can reference that ID. If you recall in our previous module where we talked about the gen folder and the r.java file, we're going to look at this now, and you'll see how we've actually generated, or how we will generate, this ID here that will give us a quick reference to this control that's on that page. Right now you see that there is nothing here under ID. We have attribute, drawable, layout, string. But if I save this main.xml file, you'll see that the r.java automatically got recreated, and we now have this main activity text view. So inside our activity, we're going to want to reference this so that we can change the text of it. It's actually pretty simple to do. It's a little bit surprising in Android that we don't have the type safety that you might expect or be accustomed to, especially if you've done ASP.NET or Windows Forms. You might expect that we could do something like main activity text view and then text view dot text, which we can't because that object doesn't actually exist. What we have to do in Android is use a method find view by ID. And what this will do is we can pass in an ID and it will return us back a view if there's a valid one on the particular layout that this activity is displaying at the time. And we don't actually have to memorize what the actual integer ID is. Instead, this is where we're going to use this r dot ID dot main activity text view. So this is going to return us a view. If we look at the return type of this find view by ID, it's a view. But that's actually not going to be good enough for us because we actually know that this happens to be a text view. So what we need to do here is declare a text view, and I'll call this main. Let's just make it short here. We'll just call this text view. And we need to cast the view that we get back as a text view type. I'm hitting Control-Shift-O here to auto-import the namespace. And you can see that, let's make this a little bit bigger, we are now grabbing the text view from the layout and then casting it as a text view. It's coming back as view, it's being cast as a text view. And now we have the ability to do text view.text, or actually text view.setText. Again, if you're not used to Java, you're going to have to get used to this get, and set. There's no properties like there are in C#. So usually if there would have been a property like text, it's going to be set, or it's going to be get text. So now we can set this to test updating a view. Okay. And now if I save this and I run this, what we should see happen is our emulator should launch the view, and then we should see the text change to test updating a view. All right, so now let's go ahead and launch our emulator. We're going to run this protein tracker project, run as Android application, and what we're expecting to see here is that the text should now say test launching or updating a view, and we see that it says test updating a view. So actually we've covered two things here. We have covered getting views from the layout. I've showed you how to do that here. We just simply give it an ID to our view, and then we can see that it gets created in r.java so that we can reference it, main activity text view, and then we use the find view by ID to get that view and then cast it to the appropriate type. And then we've also actually covered at the same time setting or updating a view. We're in the very next line, we're doing a set text and we're updating that view. So once you've gotten it, it's pretty easy to manipulate that view object that will be displayed to the user. Now, one of the things that is a little bit, I guess I find it disturbing about working with Android is having to always do this cast here. This cast, it just seems a little bit dangerous, I guess. Maybe it's just my prohibitions from programming in other platforms that I don't really like doing an explicit cast here. You don't have to. There is a framework out there put out by Google called RoboJuice, and it is basically an IOC container library that can automatically inject views into your activity. I'm not going to go too in-depth to it here, but basically what it would allow you to do is to do something like this, inject view, and then you can do private text view, and then actually you would do text view for your type, and then text view. And then it's going to automatically inject the text view and do the find by ID for you. It might be a little bit overhead for your application, but it is something that is out there for you if you're interested. Again, it's called RoboJuice, and you can just do a Google search on that or a Bing search, and you should be able to find RoboJuice and download that. And perhaps I'll cover that in a later course if people are interested. And there's one more thing I want to show you here before we move on, which is how to extract this string into a resource file. This is pretty important if we want to be able to localize our application. It's actually pretty simple to do. All we have to do is highlight our string here. And then if we go up to Refactor, Android, Extract Android String, and I'll just leave the default test updating a view here, and then hit OK, you can see that now it's calling r.string.test updating a view. And if we look in our r.java file, we will see now that we have a string test updating a view. And if we look in our values strings file, we can now see that there's actually a test updating a view string. Look at the XML format, and you can see that it's added there for you. That's really nice, makes it a lot easier to localize your application. I try to make sure that all my strings are done this way. This way I can localize, have a different strings file for Spanish or another language, and then localize that entire file, and then my entire application becomes localized.